Morning.
Morning.
Morning, Robert.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. September, my favorite month.
Morning,
Morning.
you guys. All right, so we're gonna get started because I do want to spend some time on each document. So today's agenda is going to be how to complete the buyer agency agreement, the addendum if you need to amend your agreement. We're gonna fill out a contract of sale as well as the broker compensation agreement. So, before we start, I just want to say one thing regarding rentals because I don't want to, it has to do with the agency agreement. Please remember, you also need the tenant agency agreement for your tenants. I have realized that some of you are under the impression that you don't need it. So please remember, state of New Jersey passed a law. We need to have that signed. And if you have questions, reach out to your manager, but that is a required document. The admins have reached out to me saying that some of you don't have it. You are not supposed to show rental properties without the tenant agency agreement. Now, I know Fran Blakely had reached out to the state. We are waiting for them to change the cooperating broker compensation agreement because it doesn't guarantee that you'll get paid. So,
Yeah, and I did speak to them the other day on Friday, I think it was, and they asked me she asked me my opinion, Teresa Tilton. Should they try and make this an agreement for the sale and the rentals all in one? And I said, I thought that that would be very confusing because it's actually the reverse kind of a payment. So she said, okay, well, she was, I don't know when they were meeting again. It does take time for these forms, but she told me that there was going to be a form that would help make everything better, right? And they will need direction then, Adona, because if you're putting 1% on the listing agreement, then you want to make sure that you're filling out it's going to affect on the compensation you're asking for the seller, for the buyer from the tenant,
Right.
So it's going to be, there's going to be 2 workable or 3 workable ways to do it, but we'll get to it when we get the form. I think is better.
yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see when they do that. Just give me 1 second. I'm just gonna open my dot loop and then I'll share my screen. All right, so everyone sees my screen.
Yep.
We're gonna go and add a loop. I just want to let you know that probably today you guys are going to see a change and I'm going to go through what that change is going to look like. It's probably going to happen after 2 p.m. today. So I hope you guys can all see my screen and just listen to me while I tell you what the change is going to look like. And also I will have videos and training. So if you are still having questions, you can always reach out to me after you see the change. So let me just minimize this. So we're gonna go add a loop. So you're gonna put in the address of the property you're showing or your client. So I'm just gonna make an example. Let's see, I'm just gonna make up a name. Give me a last name. Let's see, Smith, buyer. So when you get to this screen right here where it says loop template, so you see where it says referral form, listing buyer, landlord, tenant, commercial referral. When you go to let's say buyer, it's gonna, the buyer is fine, but for the listing side, it's gonna say pick your, which MLS. So if you pick Garden State, Hudson, Monmouth, all Jersey MLS, once you click that, then you can go to the next session, which will say add a photo and then finish. We're just trying to make it more precise and clean cut so you're not seeing all the listing agreements. And then if you choose to add other listing agreements, you can just go to the templates, but it'll be better for all of you guys creating that listing loop. So for the buyer, so we're doing a buyer loop, next, and then done. I'm just gonna mute everybody, and then if you need to speak, just please unmute yourself. All right, so view loop. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is when you're meeting a client, you wanna discuss the buyer agency agreement. I'm sorry, let me just mute everyone again. All right, so this is pretty, if it says required, that means it's required. So I think at this point, the buyer side is pretty straightforward at this time. I think we had made all the changes. So here's the exclusive buyer agency agreement. I do need you guys to understand that there are 4 different agency agreement. You have the exclusive buyer agency agreement, which I did make required. However, if you decided if non-exclusive, it's there. I don't know why you would want to get a non-exclusive, but it is available. Then you have the non-exclusive agreement with the rebate provision, and then you also have the non-exclusive. Actually, that needs to be changed. It should say the buyer agency, not a tenant. So I'll make sure that's changed. So I kind of left them at the bottom just because probably the one we're going to use the most is going to be the exclusive buyer agency agreement. So this is the time where you want to add your clients, right? So it can autofill. So I'm just gonna, again, I made this up. I'll just put my another email. And that's my buyer. And then buyer agent, that would be me. Right? So it makes it easy to autofill so you guys don't have to fill every single line. So the buyer was Dita Smith, brokerage Remax Select, licensee, it's me, Idona Brahimi. Agency, again, the buyer is Dita Smith. Now, some of you have asked, what happens if just one person signed, but there's 2 buyers? At the time you're writing the offer, just have the other person sign it as well. You want to make sure the person that's signing the agreement is the one who's actually buying a property. You don't want to have the father or the mother signing the agreement and it's the child buying the property. You want to make sure their name is on the agreement. Now, where it says where you're, where they're searching the properties, you want to be very, very clear. So if you leave it blank, it will just say it's covering New Jersey. There's so many things that can happen to this form. I would suggest that you guys fill it out. Like if you're not willing to drive from Bergen County all the way to Atlantic County, then do you really want to say you're covering the entire state? You can go as precise as you don't want to say like North Jersey or South Jersey. You want to mention the county. So I'll say Bergen County, Essex County, Hudson County. Now, if your client picks a county, you're like, yeah, I'm willing to go there. You can then also prepare the addendum, which I will show you guys, so you won't have to redo this agreement. So for now, I'll just put for these 3 counties that I will be showing them properties. Questions regarding this part of the agreement? The other one is the agency disclosure. So as you guys know by now, you can either be a buyer's agent only, buyer's agent and disclosed dual agent if the opportunity arises, and the buyer agent and designated agent if the opportunity arises. You don't want to just click on buyer agent only, because if you do show a Remax Select listing and you submit an offer, that is a dual agent. So make sure you're picking the appropriate box, right? You need to disclose that, and that's what you're going to tell your client as well. Also, if your client has been looking for several months and the opportunity comes where you have a listing, you also don't want to prevent them from buying your property. Fran, if you want to add anything to it, feel free. The term. So this agreement shall begin on. So that's the day that you're going to meet your client. So let's just say it's today, September 10th. Now, a lot of questions is, oh my God, how am I gonna get this client to agree to, they've never met with me. Well, you also didn't meet with them. So just do a 1-day agreement, one showing agreement if you're meeting them for the first time. And then tell them, hey, you know, the law did change. I am required to have this agreement signed. I will just make this agreement to last for 1 day. It'll end on midnight. If in the event that you decide to buy the property, then I will write the offer for you. I did reach out to the listing agent, and the seller is offering X, Y to me. Therefore, you won't have to pay me. Or you can do it the other way. You can say, hey, my fee's 3%. Let's assume the seller is offering, or let's say your fee's 2.5 and the seller is offering 2. You can say, look, if you decide to buy this property, I will write the offer for you. The seller will contribute 2% towards the commission, and you will have to contribute the other 0.5. However, we can always work it on the offer. We can add it to the offer we submit. So let's just assume you also want to make sure you're a good fit for one another. So let's say this is the first time I'm meeting them. I will just say this ends on, next day. Or you can put, it says at midnight. If your client was very hesitant, then you can just pick on the 10th. So that means it will just be for that 1 day only. Now, commission from the buyer, every Max Select, we are not collecting a retainer fee. So that means you cannot go and just decide that you wanted to take a retainer. We're not collecting them. Use that as a selling point. I haven't really seen other brokerage collecting, but if they do, you can just tell your client, hey, I trust that we're going to have a great work relationship. I am not going to request a retainer fee from you. Use that to your advantage. Commission, if you put 0 in this right here, because the seller, you already confirmed the seller's offering commission, you're getting 0. You have to be specific, right? You have to be very specific as to what you're adding here. Now, you want to make sure what you want to collect from the buyer, what your fee is, that's what you're going to add. So again, guys, I'm just using numbers to make this easy. So I'm just going to say 2.5. Now you can agree on a flat fee or other. It could be anything that you negotiate with the buyer. So for this, we're just going to say that it's 2.5 commission. You do have a protection period. So if you did this for 1 day, 1 day agreement, and the buyer was really not sure, how long do you want to be protected that in the event that they do decide to buy it, that you do get protected to get a commission? So, you can put 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever you negotiate with your buyer. I typically put 180, but considering this is just one property, let's just say 60 days. Now, remember, sometimes, even if you submit an offer and you lost and the buyer goes, yep, no, this was the only house I wanted, I'm going to move on. And that property falls apart like a month later and it comes back to active and the buyer sees that, you want to make sure you protect yourself. Questions, guys, on the protection period? No? Okay. So here's the commission from the seller. So I know I have heard you guys have a lot of questions saying, well, my buyer only wants, they don't feel comfortable that I added a commission here. They only want to see properties, or they want to submit offers only if the seller's offering commission. You can just assure them that saying, hey, look, I can only collect what my fee is. So I'm going to show you on this next page where we can actually decide that we're only going to submit offers where the seller is going to pay the broker's commission. Now, what I'm going to tell you is, guys, everything is negotiable. Even if you have a list, if you call a listing agent, they say, oh yeah, just submit your offer and everything is negotiable. Like the seller is not providing a specific amount, because we've heard that as well. Do you really want to prevent your buyer from seeing those type of properties if your buyer cannot afford to pay a commission? I think it's very important to educate your buyer saying, hey, if you decide for me to only show you properties where we know from day one how much the commission is, it's going to really limit to how many properties you can see. However, if we are open to seeing all the properties, we can still submit an offer and request that the seller either pay a commission or a concession towards their closing costs to cover the commission. Right? So I would tell you, there's not many properties available, so you don't, unless your client is very hesitant saying, nope, absolutely, I don't want to take that chance. But if they do, then you'll pick the first line, which is introduce buyer to all properties that broker believes would be acceptable to buyer regardless of the commission being offered by the seller to broker. Now, if they said, no, absolutely not, I don't feel comfortable, then you can click on this one. Do not introduce buyer to any properties where the following conditions exist. So you can say something along the line, anything that your client wants. So not paying commission, not offering compensation, anything along those lines, you can choose that one. Let's just assume for this example that the client is open to seeing all the properties that you're going to introduce them. And then here you can also check mark include in any offer to seller that the seller will pay the broker commission. So if you have a client that cannot afford to bring an additional 2.5%, they're going to want you to submit every offer asking the seller to pay the full commission. You can check mark here, right? I'm going to pause for a second and allow you guys to ask any questions. Remember, there's no silly questions. The only silly question is if you don't ask.
So Adona, just on what you explained, this is Bobby Golden.
Hi,
Bobby. Hi. You can check off those two things just like you did, but that's acceptable then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Because that's what I've been doing, so I'm glad you said that.
Yes. Yep. You can see it does say here, check all applicable instructions. So if your client says, yeah, show me everything, but every offer we're going to submit, I want you to include offers that seller will pay the broker's commission.
I don't, a little bit slightly off of this, but is the CIS form still required in addition to what you're doing on this?
Yes, which will be the next document too. So you guys need to provide the CIS along with this buyer agency agreement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So here's the broker duty. So this is what we're supposed to do with the buyers. This just gives them a summary of what we do with our buyers. Now they did leave M for other. So you're probably wondering, what am I going to write in here? You don't have to write anything, but let's just say this buyer was deciding to pick you or another agent and you wanted to do something extra. Let's say, at closing, buyer broker will pay cleaning service up to $150. Be specific. Don't just leave it blank without an amount, because what happens if they go and they find the most expensive cleaning service that's like $2,000? So this is just something if you were wanting to offer to your clients. Again, you don't have to, just giving you an example what it would look like. We already do a lot of work for the buyer, so you're not required to add additional tasks. And then this is the buyer's duty. I do want to say that some of you have told me that you're signing this inside the house. It's not acceptable. You're not supposed to tour that home without this agreement being signed. So please make sure you send this agreement ahead of time. If you're signing, let's say somebody is not computer tech savvy and they can't figure out how to sign it electronically, at least email it to them so they review it and just sign it outside the vehicle. Don't bring them inside the home without having this signed. I already spoke to some of agents that have done that, and then the buyer said, I'm not signing this, after they had shown them the property. So you don't want to be in that position. Even the people that you actually know and have worked with, they will turn around and say that to you, saying, what have you done for me? All right, so here is the definition for, I do actually, before I go there, other buyers. So I just want you guys, I'm going to read this because I don't know if you all read this entire agreement. So I'm just going to read this quickly. Other potential buyers may be interested in the same properties as buyer. Buyer agrees that broker may work with such other potential buyers prior to, during, or after the termination of this agreement. In any such situation, broker shall maintain confidentiality and will not disclose to any other potential buyer the terms of buyer's offer or any other confidential information concerning buyer. So that is disclosed to your buyers that you may have other buyers that may be interested in the same property and want to submit offers. All right, so here's the dual agency and designated agency. We did have a whole series session that was recorded. If you don't have that, please let me know and I'll make sure to send it to you. So here's Robert, where you asked the consumer information statement. Buyer acknowledges receipt of the attached consumer information statement on New Jersey real estate relationships. So you're supposed to attach the CIS to this agency agreement. So here's the termination and the breach. So just so you guys know, in writing, either party may cancel this agreement. If your client or you decide to terminate, the buyer agent does have 10 days to submit via email in writing the properties that you have shown them. And I would just reference the protection clause. So let's say you were working with this, you had a 1-year agreement, or let's just make it easier, 6-month agreement. For 3 months, you have spent every single weekend showing them properties, and then now they tell you, hey, I've decided to go on another direction. You want to make sure that you're protecting yourself for the properties you have shown. So here where I put 60 days, maybe if you have a 6-month agreement, maybe you want to put more days like 90 or 180, 120, whatever it is to protect you. So just remember, one way to keep track of properties you have shown, I always had a habit of when I'm meeting a buyer, I give them a folder, I print the MLS sheets, the customer reports, and I always give them my business card, and then I print the full report for me. What I would do now if I'm showing properties is I would have them initial my MLS sheet. So I have it for my record, and I'll have a folder for each buyer. Or, sending them a text message confirming the showings, that's also acceptable, saying, hey, please confirm we're gonna meet on Wednesday at 10 a.m. I'm gonna show you 123 Main. At 10:30, I'm gonna show you the following, please confirm. And then they reply back confirming the showings. You cannot really depend on showing time. So I would just tell you, keep your own list, please.
Bobby Gold put a message in the chat asking if anyone else lost the sound. So I don't know, maybe you can, I still have sound. Maybe you can just mute and unmute and maybe that will help. I don't know.
Will do. Let me check right now. How about now? Can you hear me now?
I got you.
Okay, good. Awesome. All right, then here's the additional terms. Now, this is where I will recommend that you guys add a clause that kind of tells the buyer, hey, let's assume that you the buyer only felt comfortable for 2, but you wanted to have the opportunity to amend your agreement in the event that the seller is offering more. I would probably say something along the line, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, my fee is 2.5% or 3%. I would agree to 2, but however, I do want to have the opportunity to amend this agreement in the event that the seller is offering to pay a higher commission. I want to be able to amend my agreement. You have to disclose it to them so that they are aware. Now, I know some of you are going to say, wait a minute, we were told we cannot collect more than what's on this buyer agency agreement, and if the seller was offering more, the buyer will take the difference, right? But now they do allow us to amend our agreement, so I am sure a lot of us will probably amend our commission as well. So I would just say something along the line, buyer and buyer broker agree to amend this agency agreement at any time. That way, they're agreeing that we can amend the agreement. Bobby, you have a question? I see you raised your hand. Not sure if he's probably on mute, but I can't hear your question. Again, additional terms to this agreement, it's optional. You can add anything you want that you agree with the buyer. So that's why they gave you an extra entire page for additional agreements. Now, Rob and I have looked into having a shorter version of this agreement. However, state of New Jersey is very specific into what language we can have, the font size. And I've seen other brokerages versions, and everybody has like 3-4 pages. So it's really hard to actually make this shorter. For now, it's actually better if you go to your buyer saying, hey, I'm using a state form, like there's nothing I created. This comes directly from the state. All right, any questions, guys? And then this is where you initial, the buyer initials, you sign, and then the client signs. Before I move on to the next form. So the next form you're going to want to have is the CIS, the Consumer Information Statement, because we're telling the buyer that we are attaching this CIS along with the agreement. So it's so much easier if you send this together than going after the fact and get them to sign. So here's the consumer information. This came directly from the Real Estate Commission. And then this is where I would put in my name, Adona Brahimi, Remax Select, and then I would write the date. And then, oh, I'm sorry, I filled out, this is for the sellers. That's why I was blank. Sorry about that. So here, they already pre-filled it, Remax Select, and that's where my client signs and dates it. Easy as that. I know before our old CIS would have you pick which agency agreement you guys decided on. This one does not. It's acknowledging that the CIS and then save. Fran Blakely, we don't have any updates on whether the state will make any changes to the CIS, correct? It's going to be
No
opposite.
changes coming forward that I know of.
Okay. All right, so we just did the exclusive agency agreement and the CIS. So now once you have that, let's assume that you guys went and found them a property. So I have my buyer's name there. I'm listed. Remember, buying broker will be your manager here. So very important. If it's a dual agency where you're submitting an offer on another Remax Select property, every manager that's doing an office meeting this month will show you guys, well, hopefully they'll have, I know Fran Blakely, you have it, I have it for my offices. We just put a list together with all the Remax Select offices, just to remind you guys that if you're submitting an offer on any of those, any listings from those offices, it's a dual agency. So make sure right here, line 1, you make sure that if it's a Remax Select, you represent both the seller and the buyer. Let's assume this is not a Remax Select, so you're going to click on the buyer, not the seller. But it's very, very important that you disclose that. All right. I mean, we have written all contracts, so this should not be too difficult. Yes. Does someone have a question? I'm just going to mute everyone. Karen, will this agreement that you just completed be available for us to view or download? It is on the one that I filled out, the one that, is that what you're asking, or the blank copy?
No, the one that you filled out, that you just did.
I can definitely send it to you. No problem.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks, Adona.
You're welcome. All right. So we all know how to complete a contract, at least for this portion, correct? Because I don't want to spend time on something that we already know how to do. All right. So I'm going to just scroll to the important portion of the contract. So here as well, if it's a dual agency, please make sure you may say, well, I'm in Bergen County. I don't know the seller from this agent in Morris County. It's still don't disclose dual agent if it's a Remax Select. So please make sure that you are also very clear on this portion as well. So for now, I'm just gonna say I was the buyer's agent. So here's something that's changed, right? We've all seen this. So participating broker, obviously it will be Remax Select. And then here it would be my name. A lot of times you might think, oh, this is like a waste of time. I've had offers accepted that were not best like other ones, but they accepted my offer because how complete my offer was. So don't miss this part. So my office address. All right, so commission due from participating broker. So remember, I had my agency agreement for 2.5. Let's assume for this example, the seller was only offering 2%. Okay, so I would have a conversation with my buyer and decide how they want me to proceed. Assuming this was multiple offer situation, I can tell my client, hey, they're offering 2, you would only have to pay me 0.5%. We can do the following. You can just bring an extra 0.5% to the closing table, or we can up the price for that 0.5% and have the seller pay me the 2.5, or we can still offer up our price as well and ask for a concession for 0.5, or we can just put an offer and request that the seller just pays the full commission. So there's different ways that they can make the offer. I'm going to make this very easy. So I'm just going to say my client can afford to pay me the 0.5. So I would put 2%. If the listing, the seller agent is off, if they're offering a commission, they can ask for a listing fee. Okay. If they're not, then obviously no. But if they are, just ask them. Don't wait. $150, $200 is not going to make it or break it for you. So let's just assume it was $200 for listing fee. And then from the buyer, I'm going to collect 0.5%. So you guys can collect now from both sides. Questions on this side, on this portion? I know we're not used to collecting from
Yes.
both. Yeah.
Hi.
Just so. She beat you. You just mentioned that if the other side is not offering a commission, we don't have to list a listing fee, correct?
Yeah, if they're not offering a compensation,
Okay.
you're not gonna pay a listing fee. Then if they tell you, oh, I'm still collecting a listing fee, you need to like advocate for yourself and be like, no way. Why would I pay a listing fee?
Okay, but we had this question in the office where so they're not you're seeing sellers where they want to see the offer first, whether they choose to offer a commission or not. So as the buyer's agent, we could still write in requesting a percentage from the seller with our
That's
offer.
correct. That is correct. So that's why I said when I was filling out the buyer agency agreement, you want to have a conversation with your buyer that says, hey, you don't want to limit yourself seeing properties that are only offering commission, because there will be listings where they tell you just submit your offer and request what your commission is. Nothing is off the table. So you don't want to limit those type of properties to your client. So have a conversation with your buyer saying, hey, this is what my fee is. We can see all the properties, and in the event that the seller is not offering a commission to buyer's broker or a concession to you, we can still request it.
And one more, sorry. So like, the example is where the seller is offering 2%, but we had a buyer agreement for 2.5. But once in a while we set the example where, you know what, we want to look like the hero and say, we'll do it for 2%, regardless of our buyer's agreement. Then we would still have to have an addendum, right? Even though we cut addendum
Yes.
for our records that we did cut that 0.5% commission.
Correct. So instead of changing your agency agreement, which the next document, I will make sure I go over the addendum where you can then change your, if let's say it was 2.5, but they only found a property that is only offering 2, your client can't pay the half. Yes, you can amend your agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Donna, this is a strange question, but I just want to put it out there because somebody undoubtedly will come up with it. Where on this document, is there a place to say that the commission is based on the sale price?
is there a line here that says the commission is based on what was the last?
Because let's say in this case, we're asking the buyer for, a 0.5%, and they're gonna come back and say, well, I didn't know that it was still for the sale price. I thought it was 0.5% of what the listing agent was offering you.
Good question. I don't think we have anything right now that says that. I'm sure that question will come up eventually when they start paying.
The buyer agency agreement says it's based on the sale price.
Sale price, there you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
the buyer
你不
agency
觉得我们俩应该一
Let me
起
just
点这
mute
个吗？
everybody.
这已经打得过合了，
and the Adona
Sorry, can you unmute yourself? Because I just had to unmute everybody.
and the cooperative broker agreement will also say it's based on the
Yeah.
sales price.
There you go. All right, so that's the contract, guys, and then obviously additional provisions. You guys all know how to fill that out.
Hey, this is a very unfair question, but using Rob Lazar's term, which I totally agree with, try not to have commission breath when you're dealing with your client. This blows that out of the water. There's no way not to have commission breath, no matter how you do this.
Correct, because now you are disclosing to them, like you need to talk to them about what your fee is. Right? So
Yeah, there's no way around it now. I'm just saying.
no, but the thing is, you don't want to make it about the commission. So what I did is when I had a conversation with buyers, I go over exactly what their needs and the wants are. Great. Well, let me just let you know with some changes that happened as of August. And then I just go into it and I let them know that now we're required to have an agency agreement for touring. I said, before, if you had bought a property, you never had to really, you never really knew what the buyer's agent was getting paid. However, now we do need to disclose it that in the event, the commission was always negotiable, but there is going to be properties where they're not going to offer a commission, which means that Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you will have to compensate. So it depends on the type of client you're working with, the type of conversation. You have to feel comfortable and own it, but you don't want to just make that whole entire conversation about money, right? You kind of have to just smoothly have it where it's like you feel so confident. It doesn't sound like it was rehearsed. All right, so I did do the contract of sale first because I kind of skipped on the addendum. So right here underneath the CIS is the addendum to agency agreement. I made it optional. I didn't make it as a requirement because I don't know if you all are going to use it. So just remember, if you are amending your agency agreement, this is the addendum that you guys can use. So buyer's agent. So here is where you pick which agency agreement it is. So we're doing the exclusive agency agreement. The date, you are going to write the date between the agreement that you guys signed. So we signed it today, the 10th, right? But assuming it was August 17th, you would write August 17th. So here's where you change the terms of your agreement. It can be extending the dates. It could be changing the commission. So I know Frantac said, what happens if you wanted to reduce your commission to 2? You can just say buyer broker and buyer agree to reduce the buyer broker commission to 2%. You guys can word it however you like. Doesn't have to be this exact wording, but this is something that you guys can do. Or it could be vice versa, right? So increase the buyer broker commission to 3%. And that is it. And then they sign, you sign. Any questions on the addendum? Fran, Blakely, would you like to add anything to this form?
No, just make sure that you do have it executed if you have to make any changes. It's really, really important.
Don't I have a question?
Yes.
This addendum, should it be property specific? Because the agreement with property number one could be different. You sign that addendum, but for some reason you don't make your deal. Now you move on to property number two, which has a different compensation offering.
You're gonna have to create a new addendum changing it back. Unless, Fran, you suggest something else, I don't think we can, unless we write it saying that this addendum is only for the following address.
Yeah, well, if you're making different offers on different properties, I think that's how I would use it. I would say that this addendum reflects the offer for 123 Main Street. Because then if you go, then you don't want to be changing your buyer's agency agreement all the time, and every seller might be offering, different compensation.
And that's exactly where I was going with my question. So
Yeah.
Addendum, I'm gonna just type in that this addendum applies to 123 Main Street.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Because the addendum, you can use a different addendum for every property offer you're making,
Yeah.
Someday
All right.
it's gonna change. They're gonna be thankful for their offers that they're getting,
Yes. Yeah, so that makes it easy. So you don't have to throw them a 5-page agreement every single time. You have one agreement, and then this one you use for making changes to it. And last but not least, the cooperating broker compensation agreement. So we're gonna go based on what I submitted when I wrote my offer, saying that it was 2% minus 200, right? So I'm making my offer today, the 10th. The broker, I'll just put Keller Williams for the sake, 1 Main Street. And this is where you put in the property. I'll just say I'm buying 20 Washington Street, Dumont, New Jersey. The listing broker is Joe Main. Okay. So here, I'm gonna put in the 2%. I've been doing this if they have a listing fee, but you guys can do it however you want to write it. So, so we agree 2% minus listing fee. And then the seller agent signs it and you sign it as well. I send this with my offer. Please remember, you want to have this back signed when the offer is signed, because you don't want them to change and say, oh no, it was something different. Even though it's on your contract, remember, contract is between the buyer and the seller. This agreement is broker to broker. Any questions? Yes, Fran.
But just, I've seen coming in, which we'll talk about further. I mean, I don't think we can require other companies to always be using the state form. Some of them have their own. So this form could come in different images. Someone has an offer from Coldwell Banker right now, and it's their form that it's coming in on. It is a little different than this. So just speak to your manager if that happens, to make sure that it is reflecting what is supposed to be on the form and the purpose of it. Their form is a little bit different, but you can't say you have to use the New Jersey Realtors form.
Yeah.
So I would just check with your manager when the offer comes in and make sure it includes everything it's supposed to.
I was told by someone that a form similar to this from another company also has the signature of the seller on it.
It does. The
Yeah,
Coldwell Banker form is a seller and a buyer signed form, but it basically is stating that they're getting the compensation of what was given out. Now, the one I caught yesterday, the agent didn't put the listing fee on this, so I went back to my agent and I said, look, their form is okay, but they need to state the listing fee on there. They stated it properly on the contract, but they didn't state it properly on their cooperative broker agreement. So
Oh,
know,
and
it's always good to check.
can we go back on this cooperating broker compensation agreement? Donna just mentioned that this form needs to be submitted at the same time as we submit the offer, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
not when the offer is accepted, but when we submit it.
No.
Okay, good.
When you're submitting it, I'm sorry. Donna, did you want to answer?
yeah, no, yeah, when you're submitting the offer, this should go along with your offer. So the documents we just went over, you need to have that at the same time. Now, we do have additional documents. Let me just save this.
Plus
So,
all your other documents, right? Like your lead paint and your
right, so, but these
disclosure.
are just the new forms. So you do have the real estate contract, the cooperating broker compensation, you have the wire fraud, exclusive buyer agency agreement, the CIS, ARW, informed consent to dual agency, if obviously, if you're representing both sides. Then you also have, the lead paint, I think, as well, yeah. So there is additional documents, but for you guys, when you want to make sure you're getting paid, you want to have the exclusive agency agreement signed, definitely the addendum if you're making changes to your compensation or any terms on that agreement, the CIS, the contract of sale, the cooperating broker compensation agreement, and of course the wire fraud. Those are a must. You need to include that at the same time. It's harder to get a client or the other side to sign something after the fact. And remember, you need the seller disclosure from the listing agent. There's no more waivers, whether it's an estate, REO, investment property. They must give you that seller disclosure. Now, you can show property without the seller disclosure. You should, and you can even submit an offer without the seller disclosure, but you cannot have your client get under contract without the seller disclosure signed. I would, I had one offer I submitted, and the listing was active prior to August 1st. And I went to the listing agent and he goes, "Oh, do I need this?" And I said, "Yes, you do. You need to have a complete form. They can't just put a line through unknown. They have to check marks unknown to everything. Flood section needs to be filled out because they do have website. They can go and find out if the property is in a flood section, and then sign it. So please make sure you get that ahead of time. We've had some situations where either the buyer refused to now sign the seller disclosure after the fact because they said this was not given to me before, or the seller refused to sign it saying, "I've never lived there. You never told me I had to sign this."
We check some holding.
Question for you, Donna. So am I to understand then that the exclusive buyer agency agreement has to be sent to the seller's agent once you present an offer?
No, you do not share your exclusive
okay.
buyer agency agreement
I didn't think
or
so.
the
Okay.
addendum with the listing agent. Only the contract, the cooperating broker compensation, and all the other required documents we just went over.
Now, the cooperating broker compensation, that has to be sent with the offer?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Because you want to solidify what they've told you they're offering for the compensation for that offer. Now,
Well, it's in the contract. You say,
no,
say it
that's
in the
not good
contract.
enough. That is unfortunately, no,
Okay.
that's good enough. Yeah.
Okay, did not know that. All right.
So I have good news and bad news. Let me just stop my share screen. So this was not recorded today. So for you that asked for the recording, there will be no recording because I just realized it was not recording. Oh, actually it is. I'm sorry. We're good. All right. For a second, I didn't see the recording. I was like, oh no. I was just going to tell you that we would just redo this. For next Tuesday, Mastermind, we're going to go over the listing package and how to prepare a listing, right? All the required documents. We're just going to do exactly what we did today on the buyer side.
And you'll be doing it from Fran's office in person, right?
Yes, I'm going to be in Fort Lee next Tuesday. So I will be hosting the Mastermind from there. And we'll have a lot more trainings. I feel like we just need to do this over and over again. I don't know if one of my agents is here, but she tagged me on the post yesterday, just saying how thankful she was that we are doing these trainings, and we are, I know it sounds like, oh God, here we go again, but we need to practice, because each time you might learn one thing, maybe not from me, but from your peers that are here. Maybe somebody who's asking a question you might have never thought about, but now you're like, oh yeah, how do I respond to that? So I appreciate you guys being here. I am very, very happy with how much we have come through with all the new changes. I feel like now we're just getting used to filling out the forms. There are unknown questions, but we'll make sure that hopefully within time we'll get all of our answers. Fran, do you have anything else you would like to add, or anyone else have any questions before?
Maybe they want to also start looking at the our new hub. Is that ready for them to start looking at if they're looking for older masterminds or Rob's masterminds? And
Yes.
also maybe you want to send, if you have questions, email them to Adona, so that maybe after next week we'll concentrate on, if we get the same kind of questions, we'll concentrate on that for the following week. You know, this is an ongoing training, and there's so many agents out there that don't know what they're doing. So it's important that, you know, if you have a listing, what needs to come in, and also going the vice versa, when you're preparing an offer, what needs to be included. Because when they send you an offer on your listing, you have to have all these forms, and you have to make sure it's complete, because compliance is huge. Compliance is huge.
And the correct forms. I've had some of you who had a listing and you're receiving offers with the old contract and the old seller not the seller disclosure, but whatever other forms they're sending you are the old forms. And I keep telling you guys, go back to them, tell them to redo it. And then if you do have the buyer and the seller disclosure is not provided by the listing agent, please reach out to your manager. We will reach out to their broker. I can almost guarantee you we will get that very quickly. There's no waivers. No one is waiving the seller disclosure. But yes, you will come across some brokerages that are still not up to date with all the new changes. And some of you have discovered that on your own, that you know, not everybody has had these kind of trainings. So I appreciate you guys all being here. And I will see you all, if you're not attending on Saturday, our fall fun at the farm. I will see you guys on Tuesday.
Donna, I have a quick question.
Yes.
So I know we just went over all the commission stuff. Now, when we're on our tracking form of sale or spaces, you know, even our commission statement, do we have to put in the notes that 2% is coming from the seller and the other 0.5% is coming from our buyer?
Yes.
Or, okay, so we put our
Yes,
total
if you're
commission and then
collecting
in the
from both.
notes, put 2% from seller, 0.5 from our buyer.
Yes.
Okay.
I had 9 houses once, so I couldn't take it anymore.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful
Cooking,
day.
Milk
And
and beeswax to make something, and they pour wax down the sink.
hold on
You
one
like it?
second. I think I'm gonna end this.